A melting pot no more. That's the focus of tonight's Angle. All right, most Americans would be shocked to learn that non-citizens have the right to enter our country, advocate for the overthrow of the United States, disrupt the education of thousands of students, create chaos on a college campus like Alexis just talked about, and then run to our courts to protect them from the consequences of their own actions. Now, from my perspective, even if the court precedent does give non-citizens certain rights, free speech concerns don't really come into play if our officials, according to the terms of a statute duly passed, determine that a non-American poses a national security risk to the country. Now, the statute in question is Section 237, A4C of the INA. An alien whose presence or activities in the United States the Secretary of State has reasonable grounds to believe would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States is deportable. Now, there is an exception in this law which states that an alien should not be deported because of the alien's past, current, or expected beliefs, statements, or associations, if such beliefs, statements, or associations would be lawful within the United States. Unless, and here's the key, the Secretary of State personally determines that the alien's admission would comprise a compelling United States foreign policy interest, compromise that interest. And in this case, what happened? Well, Secretary Rubio has made the determination in a letter that Mahmoud Khalil's ongoing presence would, in fact, compromise a compelling foreign policy interest. You with me? But the radicals, of course, are trying to use this as a way to scare you.
If you believe in constitutional rights, if you understand that they're targeting this person, and everyone knows he has been very vocal against the genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza, and they're targeting him and refusing him constitutional rights, who's next?
That's Rashida Tlaib. Now, look, it's simply absurd to believe that our framers wrote our Constitution to safeguard the rights of non-citizens whose entire goal is to seize power in the United States in order to benefit our enemies. Now, here's the bottom line. The left is trying to blow this up into a big story for their own political self-preservation. Why? They know there are a lot more Mahmoud Khalils out there, and they're living here, they're working here, they're studying here on student visas, on work visas, and it is their goal, the left's goal, to normalize this notion of foreigners coming here and then advocating for the overthrow of our government, spewing this vile anti-Americanism and, of course, in this instance, anti-Semitism. We know native-born radicals, we've seen this a lot, already hate America, but for now, they're out of power. And with Trump, the tide seems to be turning against them. The truth is, the hard left in the United States needs reinforcements from abroad to finish the job they started in earnest under Obama. So these rabid lunatics do not have a positive theory about what America is supposed to be. To them, America and Americans are a blot on the global landscape. The sooner our country and Americans are gone, the better the world will be. Now, think of the difference between how this new left thinks about our country, that it's systemically racist, it's imperialist, what the pro-Hamas people think, as compared to the way the old liberals thought about it. They thought America just needed to live up to its founding principles in order to succeed. That's what Martin Luther King believed. Listen to the I Had a Dream speech. That's what JFK believed. That's what Abraham Lincoln, of course, Republican, but revered by the left, believed. But today, the hard left wants the entire system smashed. You see it on college campuses. That's what they want, upheaval. That's bad enough when we have American citizens believing this, but there is nothing in our history, nothing in basic common sense that compels us to admit foreigners, let them stay here, who believe any of this. This is a recipe for total chaos. Justice Robert H. Jackson, writing in The Dissent in Terminiello versus Chicago back in 1949, got it right. The choice is not between order and liberty. It is between liberty with order and anarchy without either. There is danger that if the court does not temper its doctrinaire logic with a little practical wisdom, it will convert the constitutional Bill of Rights into a suicide pact. This question of whether this Columbia grad threatens national security, it should be left up to the Secretary of State and the President. This individual is not an American citizen. He has whatever rights were given to him by statute. As I mentioned earlier, the statute says it's up to Rubio to decide whether that individual poses a national security risk. Now, 1999 Immigration Appeals Court ruling said a letter from the Secretary of State laying out the serious adverse foreign policy consequences for our country is deemed presumptive. They don't have to do any more. President Trump wrote on Truth Social today, if you support terrorism, including the slaughtering of innocent men, women, and children, your presence is contrary to our national and foreign policy interests, and you are not welcome here. And at the White House, he drove the point home.
We ought to get them all out of the country. They're troublemakers. They're agitators. They don't love our country. We ought to get them the hell out. I think that guy, we ought to get him. I heard his statements, too. They were plenty bad. And I think we ought to get him the hell out of the country. I watched him. I watched tapes. Specifically, I watched tapes. And you can have them, okay? You can have them. And you can have the rest of them.
If we continue to give safe haven to those who ultimately seek our destruction, we'll eventually end up with a knife at our throats. Now, it doesn't have to be a mob on college campuses. It can be a single, disaffected, angry refugee, what some in Europe are calling low-cost jihadists. A horrifying story in The Spectator. One of these low-cost extremists was last week jailed for life by a French court. In October 2020, Tunisian Brahim Aouassaoui murdered 3 Christians with a knife outside a church in Nice. One of the victims, a 44-year-old woman, was stabbed 25 times. During his trial, Aouassaoui justified his actions by claiming, "You, the West, kill Muslims, women, and children. These innocent people who die every day, aren't they human? Don't they have families?" The UAE's foreign minister tried to warn the West years ago.
There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
Well, unfortunately, ignorance is something we have a surplus of in our government, but no more. American citizenship for the foreign-born is not a right. It's a privilege that we should be very carefully bestowing upon only the most deserving. America first. If it were up to me, I'd freeze all immigration until we really got a handle on who's here and why, until we deport the millions here illegally or who've threatened our national security. And that includes Mr. Khalil. And that's The Angle.